Hello, everybody. It's Garrett Browne again here with Demo Days. Hope everybody's having a great week. And I'm excited for today because we have with us Ryan Bailey, who is the Senior Product Manager for Team GPS, which is a product from IT by Design. I'm sure a lot of you out there know about IT by Design. That's kind of what I'm excited about because you guys are doing some really good stuff over there. So, Ryan, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Good to see you again, Garrett.
Yeah, good to see you
Excited to
too,
talk to
man.
everybody about Team GPS today.
Yeah, I'm interested because I know IT by Design, and I think you guys are doing some good stuff over there. So I'm really interested to see what you guys are spinning up with Team GPS. So if you don't mind, just for the audience out there, just first I'm gonna have you introduce yourself and a little bit Team GPS. But before we do that, everybody who's out there, if you're watching, this is being live streamed on LinkedIn and YouTube. Feel free to drop a comment for Ryan. You can ask a question anytime you want. It is being recorded, so you can watch this after the fact. If you do want to drop a comment or maybe get in touch with them, just leave a comment, but mention Ryan or anybody else on the Team GPS team. But without further ado, Ryan, I'll hand you over to you. Introduce yourself and Team GPS, and then just let me know when you want me to pull your screen share up.
Yeah, appreciate it, Garrett. So my name is Ryan Bailey. I'm the Senior Product Manager here at IT by Design, working on the Team GPS product. Just a quick backstory on it. IT by Design is traditionally known for our talent management, and that means anything from dedicated engineers to offshore talent to help desk to NOC services. And really, this was born from the pandemic era when everybody sort of had to switch to this remote or hybrid environment. And we said, look, we do a lot in office with our processes to help manage talent, manage our engineers, manage our employees, communicate to them what they expect. And so we said, hey, let's make this easier for ourselves in this sort of post-remote hybrid world. And let's just create a software for this for ourselves. And eventually we just started rolling it out to customers, and it's sort of snowballed from there. And so what we do is we really want to make sure that you have the tools and framework and capabilities to help manage your most important asset, which is your employees. We take a more modern approach to this where we don't want to just have traditional performance management, right? Where we just kind of fill out a PDF or a Word document once a year and say, hey, you did this, you didn't do this, let's move forward. We want to make sure that we're engaging employees, because if employees are engaged, they understand what your vision is, they understand what you ask of them, then they're going to perform better. You're going to retain those employees, and you'll retain clients as well, because they're going to do a lot better with those clients, knowing what you're expecting from it. So with that, I'll be happy to kind of hop in and start showing the tool, walking through
All right.
everything.
Sounds good, man. Here, let me pull it up for you. There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. So as you can see, there's quite a lot inside of Team GPS, and we cover everything from customer sentiment all the way up to the performance management that we talked about. We have business tools in here for leadership teams, making sure that you can run effective group meetings with your leadership team, tracking the right numbers, ensuring that issues are persistent. And we funnel that all the way down to the employee level, communicating to them. So for example, we'll get into this in just a little bit. What I'm looking at if I log in is a scorecard for the employee. As a manager, I can select different team members here, and I've actually defined what KPIs, what most important numbers I'm tracking for that employee here and the targets. So I can easily see week over week, day over day, if they're on track or off track with those numbers. And all of that is part of the theme of making sure that we're engaging on a regular basis. We want to make sure that we're reviewing these things intermittently and iteratively to improve instead of retroactively, totally. So what I'll do is I'll start here at the top, right? We start with the kind of strategic planning phase of an organization. So the idea is you're going to get your leadership team in place, and you're going to come up with who you are, what do you serve for your customers, what's your vision, who's your ideal customer, what's unique about you. We're going to put it all on paper, and this effectively becomes our single source of truth for our organization. So the other things that we want to put in here are our company core values, and these actually do tie in to other facets of the application that we'll show in a little bit, which is recognition. A lot of times core values become something that is just sort of fodder for a website, right? It's almost like a checklist of the LLC, right? I've registered the LLC, now I've got my core values, all right, I have a business. But really what we want these to be are something that we talk about on a regular basis. We want to hire people based on these core values. We want to reward and recognize good behaviors in replicating these core values. You want to discipline people based on not embodying these things. The example I always like to give is at IT by Design, for example, one of our core values is humility. And that's not necessarily something that everybody values, but it's important to us because let's say I'm a tech, right? And I'm really, really good at my job, but I'm kind of salty when I talk to people. My knowledge is going to stay with me. Nobody's going to want to ask me for help. I'm not going to help upscale the rest of the talent and grow the organization. So humility in that is kind of important to us. And we want to make sure we give people language to, be able to discuss that with their team. We also give you some strategic planning information here as well. So you can set sort of your big, hairy, audacious goals. 10 years from now, here's what we want to be in revenue. Here's what we want that to look like. And then we sort of just start backing that up, right? So if we're going to hit those targets in 10 years, what do we need to do 5 years from now? Where do we need to be 3 years from now? And that should hopefully help inform what we're doing in the coming year. There's some other MSP specific things in here, right? So we're tracking MRR versus one-time revenue. What do we want EBITDA to look like, employees, et cetera. But the idea is on the strategy page, we just want to know, where are we going, right? Once we know where we're going, it's a matter of how do we get there? And that's where the goals come into play. So what I would do is once I've actually set this up and said, okay, here's where we're going for next year, how do we accomplish that, right? In our leadership meeting, we're going to come through with some of those top level goals and initiatives. So what we have in goals in Team GPS is a really flexible solution to track these. You can track individual goals, department goals, and even company level goals here. And a goal can be anything. It can be, a career development planning initiative for employees, right? Hey, everybody needs to obtain a particular certification, or it can be those sort of strategic direction projects and initiatives that are going to help you achieve those targets. And one of the really, big benefits of it is what you can do is connect that tissue, right? We call it the connective tissue with top level company goals and the goals that I've assigned to an individual. So an example I like to give is, let's say I've assigned to my revenue director, look, you need to increase the sales pipeline by 30%. What they can do is actually align that with child goals. So a marketing person that reports up to the revenue director might have a goal of increasing the number of qualified leads they're generating by 20%. And that's being done, as they can see, in service of increasing that sales pipeline, which is being done in order to achieve the year-over-year revenue growth targets for the organization. So once I have that connective tissue, now as an employee, I understand what I'm doing and how that's contributing to the organization. I didn't just get a random shower thought project from my manager to have some busy work. I can see what I'm doing to help contribute to the org. So it's really helpful to do that. The other thing is you have full visibility control into these goals, right? So what I can do is if I have goals that as a leadership team, I don't necessarily want to share with my team, I can hide that from them. If I want to be super transparent, which most organizations choose to be, I can share all of those with everybody there. And then one of the other things that you'll see as a theme in Team GPS as we continue to move along is when I've assigned goals out, for example, here, I will see these in my meetings with my team members. So as a manager, I've set up these goals at the org level. Here's what everybody's doing. But then when I get down to the individual meeting level, which is a core component of the framework here, I'll see goals that I've assigned to that employee. I'll also see it in their performance reviews, right? We'll see that as we get to the performance review section. Those are really challenging a lot of times for managers who are sort of scaling. You have a large team under you. It's really difficult to kind of see and access all the data you need to make informed decisions while you're conducting those performance reviews. So having all of the data right at your fingertips in a single pane of glass allows you to really make connections that you couldn't do without that. And it helps you do it a lot easier, right? I've had 30 something people reporting to me at one time, and review time was just always a nightmare, right? I have to pull all sorts of reporting and data. So having that at my fingertips would have been amazing with Team GPS. I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I want to kind of go on down to the employee level here. And one of the things that we've implemented is a rewards and recognition system for Team GPS. So how this works is, again, we want to engage the employees. We don't just want it to be numbers and stats and everything. We want to make sure that we're recognizing them and showing that we do value them. And so what we've done is we've instituted a recognition platform. So how it works is each employee is going to have an allowance of points that they have to give out to their fellow peers. And it is peer-to-peer, right? It's not just management top-down. You can control whether or not people have more points to give. So if you have managers, for example, that you want to have more points to give out, obviously you can do that. You can even restrict the number of points somebody can give to somebody in any given month. I sort of call this the shenanigan avoidance feature, right? We want to make sure that people aren't just trading points back and forth. And one of the other things that you'll see is actually that these are not just points for the sake of points, they're tied to your core values, your company core values. So when you give out a shout out, you're going to give it based on who you're giving it to, right? You can give to multiple people, how many points of your allowance you're giving to somebody, and it has to have one of those company core values in the form of a hashtag, right? And so once that happens, it posts to the social feed. It is kind of blasted to everybody in the company. And what they can then do with that is they can actually take points that they've earned from those shout outs and redeem them either for a gift card in a gift card gallery of that, if you want to just turn that over to them, or with a custom reward, right? If you set up a custom reward store, really common examples for this are PTO days, company swag, stuff like that. So a lot of flexibility in how you control what your team is redeeming for. But the ultimate goal is we want to just turn the power to the people, right? I don't want to remember that Garrett likes Starbucks and Ryan likes Dunkin'. So if Ryan does something well, I kind of go get that for him. No, I just turn it over to them, let them redeem and do what they want with those points. Now, one thing I like to mention here is that this is the social feed, effectively what we call this, and they can interact with this here, the employees, but they can also do this through a Teams integration. So we meet the team where they are, and we do have integrations for that. So when they're giving shout outs and all of that, they can do it directly from Microsoft Teams and not have to worry about necessarily coming into the platform to do so. One of the things that you'll see as soon as we get to the one-on-one meetings here in just a few minutes is we do also, just like the goals, we tie that recognition in here. So this is a really great feature for managers because a lot of times, we're busy putting out fires or in strategic meetings or sort of doing other things that we don't see everything that the team is doing. And so this really helps me see who's interacting with who, right? Ensuring that cross-functional collaboration is happening at the organization in a productive way for everybody, and helps make sure that people aren't, getting missed out on anything. I said as well that we also track customer sentiment. So we do integrate with the PSA tools. So currently that is with ConnectWise, Kaseya, Datto, and we also have just launched Halo as well. But the idea is that I'm going to build out a customer sentiment survey. I'm going to frame the questions how I want to frame them for my customers. A lot of flexibility here. I can customize what these look like. I can keep them standard, and I can control who gets credit for submitting a CSAT survey from a customer. All of that. We also have some feedback tags here that are really useful from a customer standpoint because everybody's seen these smiley faces everywhere, right? I was just in an airport bathroom the other day and I saw one, so everybody's very used to those. And so it's very difficult sometimes when I'm a busy customer, I've got a lot going on, to have to type out exactly why I'm telling you a particular score. And so I'm sure a lot of MSPs, technology service providers, see just surveys coming in as either I'm happy and nothing, or I'm mad and nothing, which is not super useful all the time. So what we've done is we've instituted these feedback tags so a customer can tell you, like, I'm really happy and I thought that the resource was really helpful, right? Or, I'm upset and it's because the time to response was really slow. So it helps to contextualize that feedback a little bit more for the customer there. And again, this is integrated directly into the PSA tool. So you basically build it out, you copy out the HTML code, put it into whatever status, emails, workflows you have, and your techs aren't having to do anything different. They're just closing tickets and sending that out. So we capture customer sentiment. We also have that in the form of a website widget. So you can ask for testimonial data from customers and have that automatically publish here to the website widget. You can control that as well. And we also integrate with Google My Business ratings. So we sort of do it in kind of one fell swoop. So when a customer gives you that rating, if they go to submit that to you, if you've enabled the integration, it will automatically take them to your Google My Business page so that they can copy their comments, just paste it directly there and give you that 5-star rating. And one thing I'll definitely note is we only do that if they're giving you a positive review, right? If they're giving you neutral or negative, we don't try to help them blast you on Google for that. So that option goes away entirely there. We also do, from a more traditional standpoint, Net Promoter Score. So, CSAT is very transactional, right? It's just I'm telling you whether I'm happy or not after working with you. Net Promoter Score is more of a holistic, big picture item, and it's often kind of given or collected from a different persona at the organization, right? Whereas maybe a lower level person, a tech or a receptionist or somebody is going to be kind of submitting tickets to the MSP, asking for help with stuff. Whereas the owner, the person who decided to do business or write that check, is not necessarily going to be involved in that. So you want to capture how they're feeling about the relationship as well. And that's where Net Promoter Score comes into play. It's just one question with a follow-up comment as well. And it's just saying, how likely are you to recommend our services to a colleague, a peer, or whomever? And they just fill it out 0 to 10, right? And if they're a 9 or a 10 on that, then the system considers them a promoter of your brand, right? And that's really important to get the good feedback. I know a lot of people, especially at MSPs, we want to focus on the negatives, right? Because that's where we can fix things. But the positive reviews are really important as well, because we want to make sure we're drumming up testimonials, customer referrals, things like that, case studies, and you can use the NPS score as a pipeline for that. If it's a 7, go ahead, Garrett. Yeah.
So a question with that. So let's just say I give this to somebody, and like you said, you got from 9 to 10. When they click that, even though that's one question, do I have the ability to sort of logic branch where if you click it, do you want to leave a review or comment? Or on the opposite end, if they say 1, 2, can you do the same where you can get that feedback right then and there? Or is it optional?
You can. Yeah, absolutely. So you can set up the notification. The comment in there is you can make it required too if you want to have that with the particular score. So hey, you're giving me negative, I need to know why, right? We typically refrain from restricting anything like that where we're requiring stuff, because a lot of times that turns customers off from even submitting the feedback, and then you just don't know. So we want to make it as easy as possible. But what we have done is we've set it up so that you do get notified on those. You can kind of specify that to either an email, a Teams channel, so you're notified immediately. The other thing that I'll add is that we like to make sure that we talk to customers about tying this to the QBR process, the MBR process, right? At least those top clients that you're working with, the important ones that you have, ideally all of them, but depending on your bandwidth, you want to make sure that you're telling them you're sending this. You want to do this not too frequently, right? Whereas CSAT is every time you interact with me. NPS, I want to only send this maybe twice a year at the most. Typically once a year is what we'll see. And because the reason for that is we don't want to inundate them so that they kind of become numb to the survey. We want them to give feedback, and we want to make sure that we have time to initiate improvements based on feedback. And so that's also a really key component, is we want to make sure that if they're giving us negative feedback, we tell them, hey, we hear you. Here's what we're doing about it. Here's how we're implementing it. And the benefit of Team GPS, thanks for setting me up for this, Garrett, is you can create goals around that so that if something comes in, I'm right in the same system where I'm creating a goal to improve that. And so it's a really great way of tying that together. And with the Net Promoter Score, you can send it directly from Team GPS, but you also have the ability to, if you already have your marketing group set up, like we're not a contact management solution in that way. So if you already have those marketing groups with, one of the PSA tools or HubSpot or Keep Marketing, whatever, you can just copy a link to that campaign, send it directly from there, and any responses will still come back into Team GPS, which is something people often use.
That's cool.
Still on the customer sentiment side of things, I do want to come back to CES here. So like we've talked about CSAT, transactional, right? Net Promoter Score, brand loyalty, more big picture, different persona. We also have introduced something new called the Customer Effort Score. And this is based off of a philosophy of the effortless experience. There's a book written, I don't remember the author, I should have had that handy to me, but if you look up the effortless experience, it does talk about it in there. And what you're measuring is how easy it is for your customers to get support from you. This one is more transactional as well. A lot of people have discussed sort of marrying this with CSAT, either through a round robin randomized thing. Every couple of surveys, every couple of tickets we close, we're going to send the effort score. Every couple, we're going to send CSAT. I've also seen some people switch up the philosophy in general, right? Where they're going to just CSAT is instead of every single ticket, they start sending it once a month. You generate kind of a service template in ConnectWise, for example, generate one for each customer every month, and that automatically have a workflow flip it to close. So you get for the month, how are you feeling after working with us? And then effort score, they start to send on every single ticket, because that transaction is going to lead to happier, more loyal customers if it's easy to get support from you, right? If you're really happy, think about this: you ever work with a tech, you're happy with how it went, they maybe solved your issue after some time and they were really friendly, but you still came away feeling kind of frustrated. You had to call them, you had to wait for follow-ups, you had to do all this. It's helpful to be able to make sure you're reducing that friction as well.
Yeah, that right there, Phil might say that was something that when we first did our MSP, something we started learning. It was like, hey, we spent a lot of time, we figured out this very complicated issue, whatever it was. So like, yeah, it was great, but there were times where they were just like, dude, you guys took forever. They weren't happy, but they were. But that was an important. I like you guys, capturing that, because that's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, we've all been there, right? You've got customers, they're giving you positive reviews, and then it comes time to renew, and they're like, yeah, we're not renewing. And you're like, wait, what just happened? Yeah. So what we're aiming to do is give you predictive analytics on that, right? In advance. We want to make sure that we're coming through in advance and capturing as much data as we can. So it's really critical to institute that as well. So I'm going to switch gears now to get to the meetings. Actually, I'm going to talk about the scorecarding here as well. So one of the other critical components, I know we've talked about some of the recognition, setting goals, strategic planning, all of that. But one of the things that we want to do from an employee level is we want to communicate to them very clearly what we're expecting. And so for this example, I'm going to give you with engineers, right? I want to make sure that we're talking about their performance and what we expect. Iteratively. So what I will do is I'll build a scorecard, which is a collection of KPIs with targets, and I'm going to do it based on the user's role. So what I can do is say, everybody in my help desk level 1 role, I'm going to track these specific KPIs for you, right? So things like billable utilization, your productive time, the number of tickets you're closing per day, are you hitting your SLAs? And I'm going to define targets for that as well. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually integrate with the PSA tool and pull this data daily for the employee so that you can track and trend that over time. And so what I can see is, if I look for the month of November, man, I can't believe it's November already. If I look for the month of November, I can see how you're doing. Are you closing at least 8 tickets a day? And because it's based on the role, I can have that segmented based on what responsibilities I have. So if I have a level 1 tech, maybe I expect you to close 8 to 12 tickets a day, something like that. But maybe my level 3 techs, you're working much more complicated issues. I'm not going to have you doing that. I'm going to have you actually, your goal is to close 4 tickets a day. So you have a lot of flexibility in that. And we've actually done a strategic partnership with a company called MSP Bots. I'm sure the channel is very familiar with them. They're doing a lot of great things from a reporting standpoint as well. And so you get a free version with that, a free version of MSP Bots, in order to kind of define the KPI data set. And the reason you'd want to do that, right, is because there's a lot of nuance in how people manage their own workflows. So for example, average tickets resolved. A lot of MSPs are not sitting there saying that I'm closing tickets right away, or they don't have their technicians closing tickets right away, right? You want to make sure that there's a soft close. Maybe I've completed my work as the tech, I'm moving on to something else. And then a tech lead or a manager is reviewing that, ensuring that we're answering the right questions, ensuring that we actually solve the issue in order to avoid customer complaints and concerns. And so you can define within the data set, completed counts as a closed ticket for this role. And so it's a lot of flexibility there in that. Productive time is another one, billable utilization, that sort of stuff. So a lot of flexibility in there. Now, to the framework for this, right? So what you will also do in Team GPS is we want to give managers tools to better manage the team on these things, right? So I can come in as a manager and set up one-on-one meetings with my team members. Team meetings are fine, right? We want to make sure that there is communication going out. So if you're doing team meetings, that's great. I would suggest you definitely take it one step further and have a one-on-one connect, because a lot of times employees are not necessarily comfortable bringing things up when they're not in a direct one-on-one setting with their manager. They don't feel comfortable talking in public. And so it's more important, just like your employees are the first line of defense with your customers, letting you know, hey, customers are starting to get frustrated about this new offering. They're not liking that we're selling this technology, whatever that is. They're your first line of defense, and they're going to bring that to you. Your managers are the first line with your employees as well, right? If you're at the top layer, your directors, above, that sort of thing, you're not always going to have a pulse on how the employees are doing, feeling about anything. And so the managers need to communicate that to you. So we want to make it easy for managers to do that and gauge that feedback. So what I can do here is, as a manager, I've set up these meetings. We'll just jump right in. One of the things that we've done is you can systemize and template this out. So you can say, hey, as a manager, I want you to meet once a week with each of your team members. Because you're doing it in the system, we can track that, making sure that that's happening. I want you to at least talk about these 5 or 6 things, right? And you template that agenda. Now they can add their own agenda items in here, right? How are you feeling about XYZ, whatever that might be. The employee can also add agenda items here as well. So it's really helpful to give them a voice, collaborating on that. For example, we use it internally, obviously. And so my direct manager, I don't want to ping him on something every 5 minutes on, if there's something going on or whatever. I'll just add it to the agenda of our meeting so we don't lose track of it the next time we come there. So it's really useful there. We also systemize kind of where you're taking those notes, which, that's an important piece. A lot of managers do this in different ways, right? Like some managers are taking notes in OneNote, some aren't doing it at all, if they even are having these meetings. And so what this allows you to do is centralize that process and make sure that everything's in one spot. This is really helpful for an HR team from a compliance standpoint. From a good standpoint, right? We can look at this to say, hey, I'm giving positive ratings on all of these things, and we're talking really well about this employee constantly. Maybe there's somebody who's up for promotion, right? Based on the feedback. It's also helpful on the opposite side of things, right? I mean, Garrett, I know you used to run an MSP, used to own one. I'm sure you've had a situation where you just in your gut, this tech is not working out, or this person is just not a fit or something. Mm-hmm. And if you make that decision, from a compliance standpoint, you have so much work to do if you're not tracking all this stuff or communicating to them that they're not working out, right? It's going to delay that process. If you have this in place and the manager's talking about these things regularly, jotting down notes, being transparent, right? Hey, you need to improve on this. You need to do this. Then you have that paper trail. And so it kind of helps facilitate those discussions a little bit faster as well. You can take general meeting notes over here, just kind of based on your note-taking style. You can also take private meeting notes about the employees that you don't necessarily want to share with them, but you want to note down for yourself. So a lot of flexibility there. We also have a goldfish feature here, where if you have a shoddy memory like me, if I just scroll down, I can see, what did we talk about in our last meeting, if we had it here. And so I can easily kind of see, what notes we took. Oh yeah, that's right. So-and-so, did X, Y, Z. The other thing that we do is we pull in that scorecard data, right? So we want to make sure that we're communicating performance iteratively for the employee instead of retroactively, right? Nothing's worse than you get to the end of a quarter and you're just like, hey, you didn't hit your numbers on CSAT or first call resolution. It's like, well, great. Mm-hmm. A lot of good that does me now. I had no clue that that's what you're tracking. I didn't know. So this allows me to say, hey, you're off track on your CSAT score. What's going on here? Let's see what we can do to fix this in order to kind of avoid those difficult conversations as well.
I have a question. So going back to the meeting survey, the agenda, I think it'd be agenda.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about integrations. If I were to integrate with Teams or Zoom or whatever, does this integrate in any way of, is there any data sync between Teams and this, or is it?
So it's a calendar sync. Yeah, it's a great question. So it's calendar sync. So basically you can tie it to your Outlook calendar, Office 365, and then that will be on there. And when you click the link in there, it will take you directly into the meeting here. So the idea would be the manager is going to have this up. They're going to pull this in. This is going to be centralized note taking. And as soon as we get to the tasks, activities, and goals, you'll see why that's super beneficial. But it is a calendar sync, not necessarily sort of transcripting or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So they would come here or their version of this. And then, okay, cool. All right.
Yep, absolutely. Oftentimes you're in meetings. This maybe doesn't apply so much to a tech, but people use this not just for meetings with technicians. They use it for, marketing staff, sales staff, all of that. And sometimes tasks come up, right? I need you to send the file to XYZ. What we can do is just automatically create a task from anywhere in the system while we're talking about it. I can assign it to either member in the team, give a quick due date. And then what we'll do is we'll actually track all of those tasks. I think because this is a demo environment, you're going to see some overdue stuff here, but we'll track these tasks to make sure that we're holding each other accountable to these items. And so the idea would be we come in here and we talk through them, make sure that we're marking those as done, filtering whatever we need. Now, the activity data that we talked about, this is where that recognition component comes into play. So when I'm meeting with this employee, now I can see things like who are they receiving shout outs from, how many they've gotten, who are they giving shout outs to. And so this is really helpful from a couple of different points of view. On the shout outs received, maybe you're getting a ton of shout outs from people, but you're not giving many, right? And so this gives me the language and an easy way to say, hey, make sure you're recognizing your team. right? Make sure,
Mhm.
I know Garrett was helping you out with that server migration. Make sure you give him a shout out, right? He stayed late, that sort of thing. And the idea is we just want to reward that positivity. Sometimes you have the carrot, you have the stick, whereas the scorecard is maybe the stick. Hey, hit these numbers. The recognition is that carrot. We want to make sure that we're incentivizing those positive behaviors. We also can show you unique recipients and givers of these points, so you can see if people are just sort of doing it every time back and forth with one another, right? We want to make sure we're spreading the love there, and so this gives me a lot of that language to do so. With the CSAT tied in, we'll also show those here as well. So if it is a technician and they do have CSAT scores, we just bring that data in right away. So a lot of systems will maybe have the CSAT in a different spot, but it's not helpful because I'm in a meeting. I'd have to navigate away and all of that. We just pull it right into the meeting, and the same is true for the goals, right? Any goals that I've assigned to this team member, whether they're company level initiatives, whether they're personal goals, we'll show them here as well. So the idea being that we want to make sure we're keeping track of all of that. When I'm done with it, when I complete the meeting, it will send a recap email to the employee, giving them data on the notes, minus the private notes and the agenda items that we talked about. And again, that's all in service of making sure that we're compliant. There's full transparency of what was discussed. That way, God forbid your employee says, you never told me this. It's like, no, it's in the system and you got an email on it. You have full accountability there. Now, another benefit, one of the things I like about this is you'll see here we have my meetings, which are things that I'm scheduled for, but you also have an all meetings based on your hierarchy in the structure. So if I have technicians reporting to a team lead who reports to a manager who reports to me, I can see the individual meetings with the tech lead and that employee right here. So we can always see those notes and everything that we're taking, so we can keep track of what's being discussed in this. And it's really helpful to kind of prep yourself for skip level meetings and just get a pulse of what's going on there for that. While we're on the topic of meetings, right, we have one-on-one meetings. We did just launch a new feature we're calling group meetings, and this is going to be in service of facilitating proper discussions with leadership teams. So think of this like a cross-functional leadership meeting. You've got your C-suite in there. You're going to have a framework and a process and a system now to be able to kind of facilitate proper discussions, keep track of issues, make sure we're tracking the right tasks, talking about the right things, and any goals that we have. You obviously would typically do these for each department as well, departmental level leading. And so the idea would be all those people who are involved in strategic discussions would have these departmental meetings, and you want to do these once a week as well. So what I would do is I would go to the meeting here, for example, and we're just gonna check in with who's here, right? Maybe Monica's not here, for example, today, so we're gonna deselect her, and we're gonna go ahead and start that meeting. Now, the meeting is gonna have a few things that are gonna help keep us on track, right? So we'll have a timer up here. We've already defined in advance how long that meeting is gonna be, 60, 90 minutes, whatever it is, and we'll have a framework as we go across the top here for what we should be doing and discussing in that meeting. We've also defined timers for each section to say, for the check-in, you wanna spend about 5 minutes there, and each section will tell you how long you should be spending there. With the check-in process, we just want to make sure we've got a chance to take a step back from working in the business so that we can start focusing on working on the business. We don't want to get bogged down in the minutia of things because we need to be strategic here, big picture.
So, okay, so I could use this particular group meeting as post-project, analysis and even dev, things like that. So I could use this to sort of get a gauge with my team. Okay.
Yeah, it's really flexible. You just determine who needs to be involved in that meeting. There are frameworks out there, scaling up, StratOp, EOS, things like that have rules around this. But what I've found in talking to a lot of MSPs is everybody. So, for example, let's say you're an EOS shop, entrepreneurial operating system. What I've found a lot of times is people sort of say, well, we're EOS light. Like we take certain pieces that we like about it and we do certain things. And so it is really flexible, and you can use this for any sort of setting, whether you're using that framework or not. And I think that'll be clear as we kind of move forward here. So for example, let's get done with the check-in. Everybody's kind of going in there. Now we're moving on to the scorecard. this is where we've defined sort of the most important numbers as a business that we need to be tracking week over week. These are our predictive indicators in order to make sure that we're moving the business forward on our goals, right? We created our strategy. How are we getting there? The goals are communicating where we're going for that. And then the scorecard is how we kind of keep track of that. So each person, as I've entered in certain KPIs for them to kind of keep track of, will be responsible for coming in and entering data. And the system, based on your targets, is just going to show you whether you're on track or off track. And the idea here, as you can see, right, we only want to spend a couple of minutes in each section because, you know, Garrett, I'm sure this has happened to you. You get in a meeting like this and MRR is off track, and that becomes the whole discussion of the meeting, whether or not that was what needed to happen, right? Well, what happened here? Did we lose a client? What's going on? And so then it just bogs you down, and you don't get to some of the other stuff that's probably more important. That's not just this fire that needs to be put out. So what you can do anywhere in the meeting is just use our multi-create button here to say, look, let's talk about MRR. I'm going to just drop it down to the issues. MRR is off track. I'm the one who said it, so we'll table that for when we get to that section. Goals, again, you can assign these out to individuals in this meeting. These should be things that you're doing on a quarterly basis, and you'll have these initiatives, and you just want to keep track of the project. So it really helps with that project management aspect, making sure that we're not slipping, making sure that we're tackling the right things. And this is our chance to, if something's off track, again, what do? We drop it down to the issues list to go through that. Any sort of announcements, achievements, stuff like that we want to share with the team, cascade it down, we can add those here as well. Just like in the one-on-one meetings, we have task tracking. So if we're solving issues, we should ideally have tasks that keep us on track for that. And we would see those here. And the idea would be everybody goes through for a few minutes and just says whether they're done or not done. If not done, then we can drop it down and figure out what the blocker is. And then when we get to the issue section, as you can see here, this becomes our sort of running list of things that we need to discuss as a leadership team or a department or whatever the case might be. And what we do is we help you keep track of the priorities of this, right? So when we get here, what we recommend is say, you know, let's pick 3 issues that we're going to tackle first. And as you can see, this is the bulk of the meeting here for that 60 minutes, right? This is where we need to spend a lot of our time discussing these issues, solving these problems. So let's say, you know, what happened with this goal, MRR is off track, and we need to make sure we're updating our scorecard in advance. Let's talk through these. We get together either in person or, you know, virtually and discuss. Maybe we create some tasks to solve some of these issues. And once we've considered them solved, we don't need to talk about this. We've got an action plan. We can just go ahead and mark it as solved, move on to our next items, and continue on until the time permits for us. We can also keep track of any issues that we have solved here in the same vein. So if you do mark it on accident or you just want to see, you know, progress you've been making, you'll see that there as well. Once we're done, we'll come to the wrap up section, and this is going to give us statistics on the meeting, right? What tasks were created, any past due tasks that, you know, are overdue there, what did we solve? And then you'll have the ability to rate the meeting. So those of you who are maybe an EOS shop and you kind of facilitate level 10 meetings, this is a great feature to be able to keep track of this and make sure that this number is improving over time. A lot of criteria that people use for this, but, you know, that's obviously really flexible. Once you're done with that, if I give some ratings, so this was a 10, this was an 8, you know, etc., I'll go ahead and complete that meeting. It'll give me those ratings. I did close a few others on this earlier today, so that's where that rating is that calculated that way. But the idea would be we just kind of keep track of that progress over time. So last thing I want to touch on here is we do also have a performance management system built into Team GPS. I think that would probably make sense for anybody sort of looking at it and thinking about it, because, right, we're already doing these one-on-one meetings. We're talking about your KPIs. We've set goals for you. We're engaging with you on all of that. And so we have performance management as well. So with the performance management side of things, what I can do is build out those assessment forms for the team members. We can do a self-assessment for the employee where they're answering questions about themselves and the manager is answering questions there. We have a lot of flexibility in how you do that. You can do it for some employees. So if you want to kind of say, my engineers, I want to ask these questions. My marketing team, I want to ask these questions. Or you can kind of blanket do that for everybody. You can also initiate those review cycles on a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis, depending on what your organization does. But the benefit of doing it in Team GPS is when it's time for me to conduct those performance reviews, right? You know, it's our Q4 review coming up. It's 30 days out before the end of the quarter. We're going to initiate these. We have 30 days to do that. As a manager, I'll come in here to write that review. And while I'm filling out the responses here, I have the data available to me, right? So what I like to kind of show this as is, if I'm filling out a review and let's say I'm rating somebody on their accountability, because that's one of our core values. And maybe, Garrett, you report to me, maybe you're kind of getting on my nerves lately, right? As an employee, you're calling out sick. You've had a lot of issues. You're causing customer complaints that are boiling up to me. If that's happening around the time I'm doing the review, then it's going to color my opinion a little bit, right? When I'm giving you that. But when in reality, for 11 and a half months of the year, you've been a stellar employee. You're killing it with your goals. You're hitting your scorecard numbers. Your team is telling me that, you're helping them with all sorts of stuff. And so now what I can do is kind of remove my recency bias and give you a more accurate rating there. On the flip side, it's helpful for the employee as well, right? A lot of times employees will come in because they think it's either tied to compensation or something, but they'll just come in and be like, I'm 5 on everything. I'm amazing at all of these things. Whereas maybe if they're saying that on their accountability and they see, actually, I haven't completed a bunch of these goals you've given me, my scorecard numbers aren't looking super great for this quarter. Maybe I need to be a little bit more, accurate and reflect that there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really helpful from that standpoint. Lastly, I want to touch on reporting here from the performance. We do have some default questions that are built into the system. So if I'm picking a review question here, it gives me some really good insight at a micro and a macro level for the employees. So from a micro standpoint, if the employee is being asked, how well does my company recognize my value? And let's say, Garrett, you report to me and it says, look, I don't feel valued here at all. But then I'm answering the question as your manager. Look, if Garrett got a job offer elsewhere, I would do everything I could to keep him because we'd be in trouble without Garrett. Well, that's a huge mismatch in perceived value, right? Why does this stellar employee think that we don't value them? We need to jump in on that before that becomes a problem. At a macro level, I can see this by department, by manager, even by their designation, which is their role, the scorecard piece. And so I can look at this and say, hey, how come 40% of the HR team says that they're not feeling the value, or they're not others aren't sure what they do? Do I have an issue with that process? Do I have an issue with that manager? So it really allows me to hone in on the performance in that way, all while making it easier by giving you all of that data in one specific spot for you. There's a lot more in Team GPS. I know we're running out of time, so I want to kind of turn it over if there's any questions that we have. But yeah.
Well, that right there, what it's showing here, I like the feels valued aspect, because in a MSP, there are a lot of techs out there that you're like, whoa, dude, I'm burned out. I'm expected to do 12 million things a day. Maybe, I'm making good money, but I need more. I need recognition, or whatever, or like nobody's hearing me. This is a good way, because that's the reality for a lot of MSPs who rely on certain key, personnel, or just an L1 coming in and just like, here you go. This is really good for the managers to see, because a lot of times it's kind of like, man, I have no clue. They could leave any day now. This is a really good way to see that. Could they do it anonymously?
So the performance review, no, but we do have surveying in the system where you can create pulse surveys and things like that. Even we didn't talk about it before, but with like the Net Promoter Score, for example, there's an employee Net Promoter Score system built into this as well. And instead of asking the employee, how likely are you to recommend our business, you're asking the employee, how likely are you to recommend working here to somebody that you know, a peer, a former colleague? And they can submit that anonymously, because that is important, right? We just want the feedback. And not, necessarily any fears of punitive responses.
Yeah, that's a big one, because a lot of people are like, no, man, I'm not gonna shake the tree here. But if they have the ability to do that, they because
yeah, I think what we found is. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, well, I think what we found is when they start to use the entire framework, when the employees get into the habit of recognizing each other and see that publicly, when they're having these meetings and they see the visibility and understand what you're asking of them, and they have that regular connect with the manager, we're kind of opening them up to be more honest too. They have a little bit more trust in leadership and everything in order to kind of give that information. So that's kind of the goal, is we want that transparency, at least at most organizations. Some maybe don't. Some maybe don't want to hear it, depending on where you're at. But a lot of people who are looking to scale, we want that transparency, because that's the only way you can get better.
I like that you guys are. I've seen a lot of different employee engagement platforms, but from the management side, I really like how it's tying into my values, my foundational metrics, things like that. Like there's a point to it, kind of
Yeah.
a snowball point to it. It's like the small things add up to
Yeah.
the bigger things. I like how you guys are anchoring that because a lot of them don't do that. Not there is anything wrong with theirs. It's just this is really good from the management perspective because it's like, okay, cool. I'm gamifying employee engagement or not. And then it's not really a lot from a management perspective you could take away. But
Yeah.
this, yeah, I could absolutely. There's a lot I could take away from this, and this is good. It gives the employees a voice too, not just a, oh hey, I got a sticker today, woohoo. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
this is a good one.
Yeah, the other thing I'll highlight on that real quick, Garrett, is that it's also really helpful for managers. Like a lot of times with MSPs, I'm sure you were in this situation. It's probably when you ended up owning your own MSP, is a lot of times the smartest tech in the room is the one who gets promoted into a leadership position, right? Because they can solve the issues, they kind of they handle the
Yeah.
escalations and all of that, but they don't necessarily have the people skills, the empathy that's required from a leadership standpoint. So this is really helpful for them because we kind of give them the framework and the tools to do it. Hey, meet once a week. Hey, do these things. Talk about this stuff. Communicate this to your employees. So it makes their lives a lot easier in those positions as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've always said that. MSP owners and techs are sort of accidental businessmen because it's like oh, you have a problem, I have something for you. Oh, you can give me money for it? Okay, cool, let's do this. Give me money each month and I'll continue to provide this. But the biggest thing is learning the business aspect of, well, you have the numbers side, the metrics, but then on the other hand, it's kind of what you just said. It's that engaging with your team, the empathy, the creating the culture. I mean, there's a lot to it. So yeah, this is a really great way to help keep people, based in their foundation and in helping them figure out what direction they need to go in.
Yeah,
driving
that culture, like you talked about, right? Like we want to drive culture. We want to have a productive, positive culture based around our core values and everything. We don't want to just have employees feeling like they're just a number, right? I have your KPIs. I'm tracking, get it done. That's it. You're going to be successful for a little while, but you're going to be limited in your ability to scale and grow. So if you have a growth mindset, you want to scale that way, you got to make sure that you can push that culture. And this helps you do that remote or in person. So we're kind of covering the bases there.
What's maybe you went over this. It says life by design at the bottom left. What is that?
Yeah, so this is a career planning tool. So if you've ever been part of any sort of user groups that do career planning for employees, this is kind of a way of handling that. This is basically something that is either personal for the employee that they don't need to share with their manager, so that they have visibility control there. But the idea is we want to give you big picture planning stuff. So you have kind of 4 pillars, right? You have your health, you have your family, you have your career, you have your legacy. And then within each of these, you'll have different areas of that. So physical health, mental health, whatever that might be, and then different time ranges. So what I can do is kind of come in here and say, look, in the next 5 years, I want to become a marathon runner, right? And so I'm going to create some goals around that so that I'm healthy, right? I'm thinking of maybe having a kid. I want to make sure I'm around for a long time. I got to get my stuff together. And so I can start to create that here. And so the idea being that we're focused on more than just the employees, as we said, the numbers that you're hitting. We want to focus on your career. We want to focus on your personal well-being as well, so that we retain them longer, right? It's just like anything else. It's cheaper to retain customers, more cost-effective to retain customers than get new ones. Absolutely the same for employees. So whatever we can do to extend the life, the life cycle of the employees with us is all the better.
This is cool. I like that. The career by design. That's interesting to me. Just I haven't even seen it, but a lot of people are like, "Hey, how can I advance?" Is that something like okay, so it's very similar. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be the same. It's just kind of different components of that when you get in there and when you create these. This is the one that we often see people doing as fully visible, right, to a manager. Like I, for example, put this in with our owner, and I told him a specific lake house location I want to have. So he knows my goal is to get to that one day, right? I want to retire on a lake, and and he wants to know that kind of stuff because he wants to know what motivates people. Some people are motivated by money, some people are motivated by free time, whatever the case might be.
All right, I like this. It's very interesting. So the integrations, how many what all do you integrate with? I know
Yeah.
you clicked on it earlier, but there's a
Yeah.
lot there. I was wondering.
Yeah, for sure. So we integrate with the major PSA tools, right? So like we talked about, ConnectWise, Kaseya, Datto, Halo. We also do the Google My Business rating. From a kind of an operational standpoint, we do have Azure AD, Entra ID for auto provisioning, so you can auto provision users to come in depending on your size. We also have recently launched our public API, so you can start to capture CSAT data from Team GPS into a reporting tool like MSP Bots. And then the scorecard integration obviously is with MSP Bots. And then we do calendar integration for the meetings through Office 365 and single sign-on through Office 365 as well. So those are the major integration players that we're set up with right now.
It's cool. Well, this is pretty cool, man. I like it. This is definitely, like I said, a different take and angle from some of the other employee engagement platforms. I really like you're paying a lot of attention to the personal aspect of the employee as well as the company, and so it's very well rounded. I like this. So I know we're gonna start wrapping it up, but for those of you who are watching, if you have comments or anything, just drop them here. You can mention Ryan or anybody else in the team, and they'll definitely see it. If that's one of the things that, if you are interested in checking out Team GPS, where they need to go, Ryan?
Just go to teamgps.com, all one word, and there we have more information about the solution, some videos that you can kind of walk through, similar to some of the stuff that I've just talked about here. And we also have pricing on there, so it's a pricing calculator. You can go in, kind of calculate, hey, what would this cost me? And then of course, book a demo, right? A lot of times we'll show this to people, and as you can see, we're talking to so many different personas here. We're talking to the owner level, we're talking to the whoever's responsible for people management, HR, that sort of thing, service management, the employee. And so it's, a lot of times people want to bring their team in and see this. And if you go on, you can book a demo, have a little more personalized, in-depth discussion where you can ask questions and go through how it fits in with your org as well. So teamgps.com.
Okay, yeah. And also, you can go to channelprogram.com and search for Team GPS, and you can get reviews from what I call people in the trenches who've been there. They, have actually used it, so you could see some of your fellow community MSPs and IT pros out there. So, Ryan, do you have any last comments to wrap up or anything, or anything you want to leave everybody with?
No, I appreciate the platform. Happy to have everybody watching and get to show you guys Team GPS. And I hope to connect with you soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for watching today's demo day. And again, if you have any comments for Ryan and his team, feel free to drop it in LinkedIn or YouTube. Until then, see you guys out there. Take care.
Bye, guys.